Mobile devices have to remain connected, but how do they remain connected? What are those networks about? Find out more next.
You're watching IT Pro TV.
If there is ever a jumbled mess of different types of network connections, it's going to be in the realm of mobile device connections. So we have Wes Bryan here to help us out. All right, Wes, what are we going to be taking a look at?
All right, so one of the things that we're going to be looking at are the progression of the technologies for our cellular communications, because it is important to have an understanding, be able to identify, if you will, these different technologies so that if you have to support them, you can do that. And if you're in a certification endeavor, we want you to be successful. So either way, whether it's certification or in the field, we want you to be able to identify the various technologies we have for those mobile device connections.
All right, it looks like you actually have a demo set up over on Bench, so let's go ahead and head over there.
All right, everyone, join us at the bench here. We're going to come on over, and I've actually got a couple of devices, and I've got them connected to my laptop so that we can look at wireless and cellular data networks. And you will see that not every mobile device is actually going to have access to a cellular network. So, for instance, on my computer screen here, you will see that I have what is known as an Amazon HD Fire tablet. And if we look into the settings here, one of the things that we're going to see here, we're going to watch, apparently we're going to watch TV. Let's do settings here. And one of the things that we're going to notice here is that we have Wi-Fi, right? And one of the things that I don't see in the settings, if you will, is some things that we'll see in the cellular device or the smartphone. And that is things like, for instance, SIM or cellular data network utilization. And that tells me right away that this device here does not have a cellular card, so it cannot connect to the cellular network. So in this case, the wireless connection that we have is just basically Wi-Fi. We'll get back to that here in a second, because what I want to focus on more right now are the cellular aspect of this. Now, when we talk about the cellular aspect, there are a few different technologies. So for us, when we are connecting to a cellular network, a lot of times after we set up our device, the one thing that we look at is, do we have our cellular data turned on, right? So notice that we have cellular data. This is how we enable or disable it. If I do not want to use my data network, my cellular data network, I just turn it off, right? Same thing with my Wi-Fi data network. If I don't want it, if I don't want to communicate over Wi-Fi, we can always disable it as well. And if you were going to do that, you could actually do that right here, just a little slider bar. You could turn it off, and then we would no longer have connection to the network. Now, notice that that's, ladies and gentlemen, it's just a button for us, right? What technology is it using? Well, that's where it comes into play, the technologies that they use behind the scenes. A lot of times for us, we're not going to see anything much more than that little button right there. But what we need to talk about is, what is the technology behind that button, right? And that's where we get into some of the various generations of the technologies that Ronnie mentioned in the intro to this episode. And let's talk about one that's pretty much considered almost legacy today, and that is our 2G networks. Now, 2G networks have taken some upgrades over time. You're going to see a couple of ones that are kind of like, I don't know, they're midway between 3G and 2G. So what are all these numbers? What do they mean? Well, first of all, there is a group out there called the 3GPP, the Third Generation Project Partnership, right? And they're the ones that oversee these various standards. Well, the 2G was the original GSM networks that were using something known as time divisional multiple access, which just meant for every cell you had discrete time slots. Now, 2.5 came along and they upgraded the technology a little bit, and that was what is known as the General Packet Radio Service, if you will. And there was really no real increase in the actual speeds, just an upgrading of, if you will, of the background technologies. Now, as we progressed, we went into what was known as edge technologies, right? Edge technologies is the advanced data rate for GSM evolution, if you will, or the global system for mobile telecommunications, right? Finally, we have what's known as CDMA1, because they do call out something known as code divisional multiple access, and the proprietary marketing standard for that was known as CDMA1. Code divisional multiple access, instead of using time slots, what it does is it has they have what are known as codes. Just consider them two languages that a receiver and a transceiver have to speak in order to make that connection. Well, that's one of the things that we were using in CDMA, and that's where you have things like PRLs. PRL is just a preferred roaming list that's used inside of CDMA networks to allow you to know which tower, if you get out of sight of your local coverage range, that you are going to use in like a proprietary order, a precedence, if you will. All stuff that is integrated into the 2G technologies.
All right, now, speaking of 2G, it sounds like it was a long time ago, but I do still see that there's an option, like even on my phone, that says, hey, this can drop to edge network. Does that mean we're really going back to like that 2.5 or 2.75G?
It really is.
Okay.
So they have backwards compatibility with earlier standards, and if you get into areas where it's not supported, you might see that it falls back to slower technologies, and that's not uncommon to actually see. We'll talk about one coming up in the 4G range, and you can see actually bouncing between those different technologies. Now, the next one is what is known as 3G, and when we talk about 3G, it's just the third generation. Now, this is where I want you to start, if you're in a certification endeavor, I want you to start to understand some transfer speeds. If you are in a support role, you can always look these up, and it's not so critical, but the 3G, it increased speeds over the earlier 2G, the second generation technologies, saying that these speeds would have to be a minimum of 144 kilobit transfer rates. All right, this is what implemented or introduced something known, and you've probably seen this before, and if not, it's UMTS, the Universal Mobile Telecommunications System that's used inside of Europe. CDMA technologies in 3D would be continue to be used, if you will, inside of North America, but we do have to keep in mind there's not a lot of support outside of North America for those CDMA technologies. Now you're saying, I hope you're seeing why some of this is actually important, right? Why are the technologies and the specifications important? Well, if you have telecommuters that are traveling around the world, you might have to be prepared to support which cellular service they might actually have to hop on, and you have to be kind of aware of that ahead of time. So that's the third generation. The next one that we have, well, we have 3G. Let's go ahead and add another G, right? It's like 3G, only better, right? I think that's exactly how it was marketed in the earlier days. 4G technologies actually increase the base speed to theoretical speed, if you will. Remember, when we're talking any kind of wireless or cellular communications, there are a lot of things that can actually lower these theoretical speeds. And it brought it up to 100 megabit transfer speeds, right? There were two competing technologies. One was called the wireless interoperability for microwave access, just abbreviated WiMAX, and formally standardized by the IEEE. However, that wasn't as popular and it wasn't as widely adopted as the technology that you probably see all over the place, and you still see it today, and that's LTE. That's the long-term evolution. This is one of the most popular technologies under 4G. But it also went through an evolution as well. We have a second revision of WiMAX as well as an advanced LTE. So you might see LTE advanced as well. And that was kind of that in between from 4G now finally to what we say is 5G. Right, 5G is currently the technology that everybody wants, right? Communication speeds can range up to and between 50 megabit transfer speeds right up to a gigabit. Remember, again, there's a lot of things that could lower that speed, interference and stuff, but I do want you to be able to realize that. Now, one of the really cool technologies that it brings in is a new part of the electromagnetic spectrum called millimeter wave, and through technologies like millimeter wave, if you will, being able to really compact a lot of information in smaller spaces, and the ability to bring in something known as multiple in, multiple out, which is just technical jargon for an antenna being able to send and receive to multiple endpoints. We could increase it up to about 4 gigabits per second. So really revolutionary technology, and that's what you see inside of the industry today.
Now, Wes, when it comes down to it, at one point there was a very popular idea of using hotspots. Where does that fall in this? Okay, so hotspots, let me show you here. It looks like one of my screens has gone to to sleep here. So let me go ahead and I'll enter that password here, and we'll go ahead and we'll look. So when we talk about hotspots, if we go into, I'm turning the Wi-Fi off. One of the things that hotspots allow us to do is it's essentially a connection sharing technology, and we can actually see this if I jump over to our cellular device. And
Here's a thing to keep in mind, that when we talk about hotspots, you have to make sure that your cellular provider actually allows you to do this, because some of this might be blocked. Because if you're connection sharing, that means they potentially could lose out on money they could have with other people that need to be using their service. So if I go over to, we go over to our settings right here into SIM card and mobile networks, right, you're going to see that we have a few options, right? Data usage. This is important too, because we got to remember things like data caps if you will too, and we have to be aware of that. The hotspot here is, there's two different types of tethering that we have, and I want to go ahead and mention both of them, even though we're talking about hotspots. Remember, a hotspot is a wireless way to share your connection amongst multiple mobile devices. I believe 10 is the max, up to 10 devices, right? And it's a wireless connection over a cellular network. You also have Bluetooth tethering, which gives you the Bluetooth communication, and then you have USB tethering. Keep in mind, USB tethering is a wired connection. If I decided that I wanted to start a mobile hotspot, I would just turn this on, and this hotspot name would be kind of like a service set identifier that we see in our wireless networks to help people to be able to identify it and connect to it. And it also has security and a password built in. And you can change this password if you want, but ultimately, this is where you would set up a hotspot and allow other mobile devices to connect to your network.
Yeah. Now, actually being able to use a hotspot, that's pretty cool. But there's sometimes, though, it actually is going to be what you actually need, because let's say that the current wireless you're on isn't something that actually is supporting everything. Going to your Wi-Fi hotspot or your hotspot here might actually be the way to get you around that. But like you said, with the idea of the data caps there, we may have to be very careful about how we tend to use that as well. So it is something to consider too. Now, what about just regular Wi-Fi?
Yeah, Ronnie, so Wi-Fi is essentially, again, enabling it, turning it on or turning it off. But let me show you kind of what it looks like here. So I'm back in the wireless settings, or the Wi-Fi settings, if you will, of my Amazon Fire tablet here. And let me kind of just show you how I got there. So I'm in the settings location, and I just choose internet. And then I choose Wi-Fi preferences. Now you can see I'm already connected to the wireless network, the Wi-Fi network here at IT Pro TV. But if I wanted to, I could just find the network via its name, and I could essentially just type in the password. And if I get the password right, and I choose connect, hopefully what we're going to end up seeing is, and I probably didn't type that password right. Let me try that one more time. And hopefully I have typed it right this time. And one of the things we can see is that I am now connected. All right, so that's really, really simple to do. You can also do this on your mobile devices, again, that do also have connectivity to a cellular network. You can still use Wi-Fi, and it's common to do that so that you can save on some of the data that they're charging you over the cellular network. So if we go into our Samsung device, let me kind of show you from the beginning, right? Because we're both using Android on both of these devices here. I'm just looking for the settings icon here. I'm looking for Wi-Fi, and you can see I'm already connected to the Wi-Fi guest network. And if I wanted to connect to IT Pro TV's network, I would do the same thing. I would enter the password to allow me to make that connection. Once I make that connection, we now see that I could use the wireless network in order to send my communications, thereby saving me some of that data on my data cap.
Now, with those connections, those do tend to connect us out to the internet or even beyond that device to, of course, other networks. But what about Bluetooth? That doesn't seem like it actually is like an internet type of connection, is it?
No, it's not. Thank you, Ronnie. That is a very short-range connection. There are a variety of Bluetooth standards, and I've actually got some of them in the show notes so that you can see the progression and some of the technologies. Again, if you're in a certification endeavor, these specifications are going to be important. If you're in a support role where you just need to support somebody, but you're not looking for specifications, it is important to at least understand some of the capabilities of your Bluetooth revisions, if you will. Like currently we have the 5, I think, is out right now, but they really only are calling out up to around 4.0. And we started getting into things like Bluetooth with enhanced data rate, Bluetooth with low power, if you will. It's called low energy, and that is perfect for these mobile devices so that the Bluetooth radio could actually be powered by a battery that's no bigger than the size of a dime, and that battery would last for 10 years, right? So it is important to understand those specifications as well from a support standpoint so that you can support the devices that you are currently have within your organization. Now, from a configuration standpoint, it's really nothing more than, in fact, I'm kind of still in my wireless settings. Let me back out of the wireless settings. And you can see that we have Bluetooth here. On the left-hand side, my tablet, I also have Bluetooth, right? I could pair a new device if I wanted to. Notice that while the interfaces are slightly different, right? Different coat of paint, they are saying the same thing. And all I would have to do here is just choose pair a new device. And then what's going to happen is my device is actually, oops, sorry, guys and gals, let me back out of here a little bit. Notice that it can actually see my Fire tablet. They're next to each other right now, and each one is broadcasting their name. Right, so what you have is when you turn on Bluetooth, you have to do what's known as a pairing mode. And when we talk about pairing, that means first you turn it on so that the device can be discovered. Notice my Fire tablet here can actually be discovered. Now, I don't know if it's actually going to connect to this the tablet, but notice that it's going through a pairing device, and it did. It said, hey, I recognize this, and then there's a little pin number there. Then it's saying, hey, do these match? So that you know on each side that these are legitimate authorized devices. If you don't recognize that code and it comes up, you need to disable Bluetooth because there might be a security vulnerability. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we can pair these devices up. I'm going to go ahead and cancel these, but we can pair these devices and then they can communicate together. And that works for your accessories, speakers, if you will, headsets, all of that can be paired through your Bluetooth connections.
All right, now there's also something else that we have to consider, which of course are cellular location or GPS. How does that actually kind of fit in here?
Hey, Ronnie, that's a great question, and this is a fascinating concept. Global positioning system, right? We have them here in the United States. We have them in Russia. We have them in China. You have a series of satellites that are all in orbit around the Earth, right? And what they do is GPS you can use, and let me see if we can see the location services right here. You can actually see that right there is a location service, right? Now, with that location service, if I turn it on or I disable it, right? What is it doing? Well, it can actually reach out to the GPS-based systems, which is essentially 24 satellites that are in orbit right now, and 3 of them will form a constellation. They'll do something known as triangulate. And then they use another technology that's just called trilateration that uses 3 distant points to figure out where you are. Now, there's other things that they do, and you've probably seen some of these cellular location services that use another 3 type of metrics, distance traveled, speed, and time traveled, to be able to check where you are. You've probably seen it when you've used a map app inside of your mobile devices. How does it know where you're going? Well, it's using the GPS and the cellular location services in order to do that. Keep in mind for your company security policy, it might tell you to disable this, but keep in mind that it also allows you that unique user experience across a variety of your mobile applications. GPS is a very good system for tracking. It's also a very good system for location services. Whether you enable it or disable it is really going to be contingent on what you need.
Thank you for watching IT Pro TV.